Hey everyone, my name is Kate. I am an archaeologist and historian, and today I will be reviewing the game House of Ashes in the Dark Pictures anthology. If you're not familiar, this is a horror series in which you play as various characters and attempt to have them all make it through the experience. You control their choices and actions throughout the game, and every choice has real in game consequences. I love watching people play these games as the stories are engaging and they keep you at the edge of your seat, but I scare pretty easily, and I'm not a huge fan of horror. So, while I partially hide behind a pillow, let's dive into the ancient historical background in which this game takes place. Also, a very large disclaimer there will be spoilers, and this game is filled with blood, guts, and gore. If that is not your thing, then check out one of my other videos, and I'll see you in the next one. In this video, all the game footage I will be using comes from Gab Smolders, so be sure to check out her video, which is linked in the description below. In the game, we follow a U.S. military team sent to Iraq in 2003 in search of potential weapons or mass destruction, or WMDs. After a gunfight, the team and Iraqi Republican guards fall through the ground into a cavern where there is an Akkadian temple. They must survive and find a way out, battling the vampiric bat-like creatures that stalk the darkness. Before digging into ancient history, let's first go over some useful vocabulary. Mesopotamia is the name for the region around the Tigris and Euphrates rivers that encompasses many different types of people and is the place where the earliest civilizations in the world developed. Sumer refers to the region in Mesopotamia made up of independent city-states between the Euphrates and Tigris rivers. The people who lived in this area were collectively called Sumerians. Was a major city located in Sumer and is one of the oldest cities in the world. On a few occasions, rulers of would conquer large areas, establishing their own ruling dynasties for very brief periods of time. Next is geography. Iraq is located in the Middle East, to the west of Iran, and to the north of Saudi Arabia. While some sections of the country are desert, the famous rivers of the Tigris and the Euphrates run through the central region. It is around these rivers that many ancient nations thrived in what is known as the Fertile Crescent. One such empire in the focus of today's video were the Akkadians. The Akkadian Empire lasted roughly from 2350 BC to 2150 BC. The empire was created when Semitic monarchs defeated various other city-states in Sumer until it all united under one rule. The name Akkadian comes from the city of Akkad, which was the capital. During this time, they were surrounded by a number of civilizations, including Egyptians, who were experiencing the age of the pyramids, the Mitanni, the Persians, the Phoenicians, the Canaanites, and, as will be important here, the Gutians. The first ruler of the Akkadians is Sargon, who led military campaigns expanding their rule. There were a few rulers after him, with the empire reaching its peak under Naram Sin, who we see in the game. Naram Sin is the grandson of Sargon and is responsible for stretching the empire to its furthest limits. His name also means beloved of the moon god Sin, which is fitting as in the game the solar eclipse plays an important role. Sin was a Mesopotamian god that had different versions across different areas and cultures. The symbol for the god was a bull, as the waxing and waning moon had the same shape as a bull's horns. The moon was also an important part of divination and was an omen, likely due to the fact that the moon provides illumination in the darkness. In ancient Mesopotamia, the solar eclipse was an omen of catastrophe. There was a practice of creating a substitute king, which would take the true king's place, thereby taking on any catastrophe heading the king's way. After the eclipse passed, the king would re-emerge and the substitute sacrificed. In the beginning of the game, we see an Akkadian warrior trying to sacrifice a Gutian man. The Gutians were, in fact, real. They were located to the east of the Akkadians in the Zagros mountain range. Unfortunately, not a whole lot is known about them, and what we do know comes from the very biased sources of Gutian enemies. They rose to power around 2230 BC, and it's thought that they contributed to the downfall of the Akkadians. But their empire was short-lived, lasting around 170 years before they were defeated by Utu-Hangal, who ushered in the third dynasty of around 2100 BC. Here in the throne room, we are introduced to the renowned Naram Sin. The year is 2231 BC, in Akkad, making this game take place 23 years into his reign. We can see him seated on a throne wearing a mask. This mask is based on an extremely famous artifact found in 1931. The mask is believed to be of the king Sargon, the founder of the Akkadian Empire, although no one knows for certain. It is not a true mask, as it likely would have been attached to a statue. There's obvious damage to the eyes, nose, and beard, and it has been suggested that it was purposeful, a way to humiliate the once great king whose empire had fallen. While given the title of mask, it is very unlikely that they wore masks like this in real life. The mask shows a beard and a hairstyle or a wig helmet, which, based on other visual examples of relief, was just the style of the time. You can find the mask housed in the Iraq Museum in Baghdad, Iraq. When it comes to the concept of the underworld in ancient Mesopotamia, it changes over the centuries. Some sources say it's underground, while others say it's above ground. Also, the Sumerian word for the underworld, Kur, is also the word that's used to refer to foreign lands or a mountain. So the entrance could be to the west, down in the ground, or in the northeast mountains. Another word for the netherworld is Ki, which is used in a mythological sense instead of the literal geographical sense. In the game, it seems to take the interpretation that the underworld, a dark and terrifying realm, follows the translation given in the story of Gilgamesh, and the hereafter is located within the ground. In the afterlife, human ghosts were ruled over by deities, and there are also 7 evil spirits or demons. These demons possess the ability to cross over from the netherworld into the world of the living and drag the living back down into the underworld. The living were also responsible for leaving offerings for the deceased, and if they did not, the dead's ghost could transform into a demon who then hunts and snatches the living. When Rachel and Eric are roaming around the cave, they find a statue that Rachel identifies as Pazuzu. Modern audiences might recognize the name from the 1973 movie The Exorcist, in which the demon Pazuzu possesses Regan MacNeil. In ancient Mesopotamian mythology, Pazuzu was the king of the wind demons. He had legs and arms of a human, with paws instead of hands, 2 pairs of wings, a scorpion's tail, horns on his head, a beard, bulging eyes, and a canine's mouth. While Hollywood portrays him as a vicious demon, Pazuzu was actually a neutral demon. He was called upon to scare away another destructive demon, Lamashtu. But there is a little bit of a hiccup with his appearance. While he did appear in ancient Mesopotamian mythology, he does not appear in the archaeological record until the first millennium, around 500 years after the fall of the Akkadian Empire. When they turn the lights on in the throne room, we can get a much better view of the statues around the room. They are called Lamassu, a guardian deity made up of a bull or a lion's body, eagle's wings, and a human head. These statues, more often than not, appeared in pairs and were placed at entrances or important locations. However, the Lamassu is an Assyrian creation, not an Akkadian. The Assyrians were also located in ancient Mesopotamia and were conquered by the Akkadians around 2334 BC. After the fall of the Akkadians, the Assyrians would gain power and create an empire of their own. So, in summary, while Lamassu is not strictly Akkadian, you would find them within the boundaries of the Akkadian Empire. When we are following Nick, Jason, and Merwin through, we first gain a glimpse of the creature. Based on the fact the game is called House of Ashes, and we are centering around the idea of the underworld, these demons seem to be inspired by the 7 evil spirits that live in the netherworld. They are described as destructive beings who served the king of the gods, Anu. In a poem, it is described how the spirits darkened the moon, wiping out the light. Quote, "The evil gods, the messengers of Anu, the king, are they. Raising their evil heads, in the night shaking themselves, are they. Evil searching out, are they. From the heaven, like a wind, over the land rush they." Sections of poems describe their characteristics. Quote, "Destructive storms and evil winds are they. A storm of evil, presaging the baneful storm. A storm of evil, forerunner of the baneful storm. Compassion and mercy they do not know. Prayer and supplication they do not hear. The high enclosures, the broad enclosures, like a flood they pass through. From house to house they dash along. No door can shut them out, no bolt can turn them back." The cavern in the mountain they enter. The throne bearers of the gods are they. May the spirits of heaven remember. May the spirits of earth remember. I think our vampiric bats are a creative interpretation of such creatures, a supernatural attack dog of sorts. The setting also seems to be taken from the Sumerian poem about the curse Agade, which describes the downfall of the Akkadian Empire, dating to the third Ur dynasty. In the text, the deity Enlil no longer favors Naram-Sin and ignores him when the king prays to know why. An angry Naram-Sin then takes his army to Enlil's temple, considered the literal home of the god, in Ekkur, and destroys it. An angry Enlil then sends the Gushans to destroy them, laying waste to the Akkadians. The other gods side with Enlil, cursing the city of Agade, also known as Akkad, to ruin. Considering our stories start with Naram-Sin, an eclipse which is an omen of the death of a king, and a temple of some kind, there's a possible interpretation of a king enraging a supernatural being that unleashes a demon horde. What starts as a pretty decent game ends terribly. Let's take a moment to briefly discuss why the alien narrative in ancient history is harmful. While it seems harmless at first glance, this idea feeds into a larger idea that aliens were an integral part of the ancient world, which then leads to their gods. The overarching power behind these cultures were aliens too. All the ideas and construction for ancient monuments must have come from aliens, that it's impossible for humans to reach such complex technical thought. This is inherently racist and takes the accomplishments away from non European civilizations that deserve them. This then directly contributes to culture erasure, trying to remove the non European people from the histories and replace them with extraterrestrials. When we look at the why, it all comes back to the idea if you're not white, then you don't possess the ability and you are not civilized enough to have created something amazing. This narrative is incredibly harmful, and the media needs to be more mindful when talking about ancient cultures. If you want to take the alien twist route, go for it. Just leave ancient cultures out of it. All the historical references and naming the game after an Akkadian concept implies that their idea of gods and demons is informed by aliens, which is entirely irresponsible. Overall, I think the game excellently captured the creepiness factor and they did a pretty decent job on the research. While not everything is perfect, everything is from ancient Mesopotamia, which is a plus. I'm choosing to ignore the ending, much like the fourth Indiana Jones movie, and instead, my headcanon is that the vampire bats are demons. I'd love to hear what you guys thought of the game in the comments. If you liked the video, be sure to like and subscribe, hit the bell so you get all the notifications, and I will see you in the next one. Until then.